Howdy doody guys, and welcome back to Stay Inspired. For this episode, it's going to be our very first Let's 3D model. We're going back to the Let's Design Weapons video I did, where we spoke to Ollie and designed a brand new weapon of his choice. So today it will be the follow-up to that, where we actually 3D model the weapon. Okay, so before we get started, I realise there's a lot of people who probably don't know what 3D modelling is, so there's going to be a little bit of a live tutorial session here. I know we're going to turn into a classroom for a couple of minutes, not even that. Just so I can give you a very basic understanding of what's going on, because it can look incredibly daunting. So to get started, what we see here, this is just a brand new scene, essentially like a document in Photoshop. This is your blank canvas. This is essentially a blank page, except the difference is, because it's 3D, what we've got instead of a piece of paper is a room. Okay, so you're gonna have to sort of change the way you sort of see a little bit, because it is that concept of 3D space that, you know, some people can take a while to get your head around, and it can be a bit confusing. So we start off with this empty room, and when you need to start a 3D model, you do it the same way you would, and the same way I do it in my other videos with drawing. If you're drawing a person, you want to deconstruct what you're actually seeing into its simplest forms. That's why when you draw, or when I start drawing a head, I always start with a circle for the cranium, and then maybe a square for the jaw, because we're just taking these complicated shapes and this complicated geometry, we're just forcing it down into basic shapes. And we're going to do exactly the same. In that same sense, these 3D modeling packages come equipped with what are called primitives, and they are cubes, spheres, cylinders, all 3D items. So if I just go ahead and pop a cube in there we go, and if I change the screen around, there you go, you can sort of already see that we're playing in 3D space. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail, because this isn't a course, this is just a little, let's show you what's going on. And you can break this cube down into the points that make it up. So we've got these things here, which are the corners, and these points here are called verts. Now you can move these individually, you know, turn them around, pick them about. You could also go to edges, which selects edges of the cube, move those around any direction. You know, you can even scale them. I'm going to find the button. You can scale them down or up and change them around. And finally, you can do the same, but with the actual faces of the cube. So it's a good place to start, no matter what you're modelling. Let me give you another example of things we can do. So there are certain tools involved. Obviously, you're not building things just from cubes. You change the cube. So you can take a face. Let's take this one here, and you can inset it. There we go. So now we've broken that down. Pull that out a little bit. So already we're getting a shape that's quite different from a cube. You can do it on the top as well, but maybe let's have that one pull inwards. So already we've just turned a cube into something that looks more like an old CRTV. You could also maybe cut and slide. Now this will add more points and verts and edges to the model. So then you can take those two. Let's pull those out. Well, these ones around the corner here. Pull those out as well. So there we go, I'll just leave it at that. It's a very basic example, but I mean, we've already come up with quite an interesting shape. And say that was a finished model and that was ready, you'd be ready to put that in a game engine, or even into, you know, composite it into a piece of film software, and that's the basis generally of how things are done with 3D modeling. You know, people make lavish 3D models of monsters and creatures, and you know, these turn into the Balrogs from the Lord of the Rings films. You know, it's crazy. There are some very talented people out there. Or likewise, you can take those creatures and put them into games, but There's a lot more steps to that, but we won't go into this in this video. So now that that's sort of the basis and the basics out of the way, I will continue with the Warhammer. I hope you enjoy. So the processes of building the Warhammer were pretty much the same as in the video I just showed you. Using the original concept piece of the Warhammer and using that as reference, just use primitives and build up the shapes and layer in the details until you've got something that you're quite happy with. Okay guys, so that is the final 3D model. There's certain things I could do to refine it, such as texturing it, but I think I'll leave that for another video, maybe make this whole thing a 3-part series. In the meantime, feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you've got anything to say, and until next time, stay inspired.